Konshu is a member of the Ennead, the Heliopolitan race of gods that were worshipped by the people of ancient Egypt. He is the god of the moon, who also prided himself in being the protector of travelers in the night. Not being able to enter the earthly plane, Konshu has picked countless champions throughout history to work as an avatar and be guided by his will. He can manipulate mystic energies for supernatural effects, such as, simple little things, interdimensional teleportation, telepathy, healing the injured, resurrection, earthquakes, and I'm forgetting something. Right, granting superhuman powers to mortal beings. He can also steal the power of other magical heroes and store them in Ankhs. At one point, I think he managed to get a hold of the powers of Ghost Rider, Iron Fist, and even the Sorcerer Supreme himself, Doctor Strange. Konshu possesses superhuman durability that allows him to withstand unspecified levels of injury. So yes, while it is possible to injure this god, his healing factor is completely out there. So good. He can control moon rocks and everything that is made out of them, such as, a little thing known as Mjolnir, which is made of Uru, the remnants of a dead celestial body. Now, while Konshu doesn't wield any weapons of his own, he's bestowed power upon at least several over time, making him quite the threat. X-23 has always been one of the most popular mutants in Mar-Vell ever since her introduction, so it only makes sense that she has a villain of her own. And this is where Haymaker comes in, an interesting villain for a couple of reasons. But one of the most notable is that Jordan Gaston is non-binary, allowing for representation to burst into comics for heroes and villains alike. But what makes Haymaker a great villain is not only their past as a martial arts fighter that was injected with the mutant growth hormone, but the fact that they personally have a bone to pick with Laura Kinney, since she offed their brother years ago. Not only is Haymaker a great fighter, but they also have grenades that can depower mutants, evening the odds against X-23. With Lex Luthor behind bars yet again, it's time for Superman to face a new foe. But what could be worse than Luthor? But a man who despises both the Man of Steel and Lex equally? Graft was introduced in the first issue, and his plans are still unfolding. An old enemy to Lex, but a new adversary to Superman, Graft is an intelligent villain who has tried to bring Metropolis to its knees. In issue number 4, it is revealed that they are using Kryptonian science to enhance Superman's foes, which makes any attack incredibly specific to Superman on both a physical and cultural level. Quite frankly, the doctors have turned the worst parts of Krypton's legacy against Superman, because these are things that have already caused him harm before, and this experimentation only makes things more dangerous. And it's proof that somebody's not above making deep cuts to destroy their enemies, and their success thus far means Superman is going to need all the help he can to stop them. As the leader of the assumed secret order of mad scientists, Graft has been tinkering and upgrading a lot of villains. We're talking Parasite and dissecting familiar faces like Bizarro. The experiments are far from over, and Superman is still preparing for what Graft throws at him and the Super Corps next. But what is known is that this villainous genius is not done, and that's scary. Red Mask is technically an original character, even if his ties to the Joker are a little too close for comfort to me. Darwin Halliday may have been a great chemist and the CEO of Halliday Industries, but his constant strive to fix the emptiness within caused him to become the Joker in a parallel universe. And ever since, Darwin has been obsessed with recreating multiversal experiments to drive himself to the same madness that created the Joker, so that he could be free of limitations. Now, Darwin has realized he could never become the Joker, but he's determined. And with a villain like this, creating new Jokers for realities where Joker does not exist, has not been created yet, or is dead, there is much to fear, providing Batman and readers with a fearsome proto-Joker that leads Batman to hop through the multiverse, encountering other Batmen. The Lazarus Reign saw many new heroes and villains arrive on the scene, with one of them being Christopher Lee, assuming the identity of Insomnia. Now, Insomnia first appears in Dawn of DC, Night Terror Special Edition, and this is where we get our first glimpse of this villain that can summon dreams, conjure illusions of others, travel between the real world and the nightmare realm, and alter his physical appearance while in the nightmare realm. This powerful being had the power to invade and trap heroes and villains within twisted amalgamations of their own nightmares, keeping them suspended in the frightening realities of the creations they conjured in their sleep. Do you know how terrifying that is? Insomnia has made for a great horror-themed villain with a grudge against the Justice League for their failure to save his family during the Dark Knight's Metal incident. So with Insomnia at the helm of villainy, this monster has nothing left to lose, and nothing but hatred for heroes as he terrorizes others within their own minds. Like, get out of there, my mind's already awful enough to me. Thank thank you. Technically, Gorgon died in X of Swords, but bear with me here. This was after joining the mutant nation of Krakoa, becoming one of its captains, but before that they were a very reliable villain. They're a mutant with telepathy, transmutation, superhuman physical attributes, also a polymath genius, and extremely skilled hand-to-hand combatant, even leading the hand for a period of time. Gorgon made quite the impact during his debut, and at the end of the day, his strongest feat remains his fist. He was able to sneak up on Wolverine completely undetected and kill him with one strike, piercing his lungs, so he constantly was just like Look, Wolverine is ridiculously hard to hurt, and it takes expert knowledge of anatomy, skill, and strength to overcome his adamantium skeleton and healing factor. And also his senses make it almost impossible for you to get the drop on him. I don't know, I think Gorgon might be coming back. I know, it's a bit of a stretch, but like, I'm sensing it, folks. Most DC comic supervillains usually get one honest attempt at contesting against a superhero, and while they might reciprocate, their original ambiance of dread might not be as substantial. But that wasn't the case with Vandal Savage. First appearing in Green Lantern issue number 10, Savage was a Cro-Magnon era warrior who gained immortality after finding a mysterious asteroid. And for 50,000 years, Savage would battle many DC heroes, and each encounter would always leave massive destruction in his wake. You don't want to overlook that. The Orcus Initiative is Krakoa's greatest threat. The anti-mutant coalition is composed of the best minds from multiple secret organizations working together to destroy the mutant nation, and Nimrod is their greatest creation. Familiar to longtime fans of the X-Men, a Nimrod unit is the ultimate sentinel and usually can only be created with technology from the distant future. So Nimrod has proven to be a powerful addition to Orcus's arsenal, despite not being the most well-known villain. By the way, Nimrod has also pulled off a pretty impressive feat of his own. He and Omega Sentinel went head-to-head with Magneto and Xavier. Nimrod has always been incredible, but seeing him dismantle two of Krakoa's strongest mutants really showed just how dangerous he can be. Another dead one, I know folks, but like, bear with me here. The Apocalypse twins were the offspring of Archangel and the Final Horseman, Pestilence, and when they were younger, they were stolen by Kang the Conqueror, who had them raised in an anti-mutant situation in an alternate future controlled by the Red Onslaught. And they grew up in the most brutal environment imaginable, so they would be powerful enough for schemes. However, they were like, no, we're gonna use our powers to break your hold on us. Then they raided Kang's trophy room, took the axe that Thor had used before he was worthy of Mjolnir, and posing as Loki, Kang had tricked Thor into enchanting it so it could pierce celestial armor, making it a very powerful weapon. So the twins were able to get the drop on a celestial and survived long enough to get in close and kill the cosmic god using the axe. They also planned a mutant rapture. I just can't stress this enough. They stole a weapon that can cut celestial armor from a trophy room to kill somebody, and sending the celestials to destroy Earth and indirectly all of Earth's futures. And then to ensure their success, they used life and death seeds from the gardener to create the 4 horsemen of death and a lot more. They also had the Scarlet Witch bring all mutants to the Aqaba Ark, sparing them from celestial judgment so they could be delivered to a new paradise. And they're also characters that I think are going to come back. So it's not always common for a villain to be a true pound for pound equivalent to a hero, not just in strength but also in intelligence, cunningness, and drive to achieve their goals. But for Batman, I think Prometheus is his sinister reflection. So with Prometheus, after his criminal parents were killed, he underwent an odyssey remarkably similar to that of Bruce Wayne's. Both a pinnacle in condition and intelligence, Prometheus is a bit of a scourge and ravager upon DC's heroes. So in Batman issue 108, literally advertised as Meet Miracle Molly, over 12 pages, entirely a walk and talk dialogue with Batman, Molly reveals herself voluntarily. And honestly, even just that, feels really refreshing. While it sort of resembles the classic bad guy trope of revealing a dastardly plan, thinking you're about to get one up over somebody, what's different about Molly is her lack of gamesmanship or self-involvement. She doesn't appear to be setting any traps for Batman. She's not serving her own ego by taking a victory lap. She simply reveals her motivation because he asks, and because she has a perfectly legitimate reason to tell him. Yeah, Batman is as surprised as we were reading it. The dynamic is engaging. Molly makes it plain that Batman has no need to use his world's greatest detective skills, and she in fact sees through the match's disguise that he arrives in when he tries to infiltrate what he believes is the headquarters of her collective. Look, her powers and her skills are that she's a genius at creating wearable and cybernetic tech/human enhancement, and she is clearly in the driver's seat of this entire interaction. Batman is there to learn. Molly is there to tell him anything he wants to know, mostly because it follows her and the Insanity Collective's core principle to allow Batman to join their cause if he chooses to. And really, it's that confidence in her cause and the absence of any fear of Batman that's just so incredible. Batman and Molly's real opposition seems to be in the ideological arena, with the Dark Knight finding himself unprepared in a legitimate debate of topical ideas. An unprepared Batman! Think about that! The original Nightshade was a criminal named Tilda Johnson who frequently battled Captain America back in the 1970s. However, However, in 2023, Mar-Vell introduced Tilda's cousin, Logan Lewis, in Mar-Vell's Voices Pride. So first appearing in the story, What May Bloom, Logan is a PhD student working on research to cure sickle cell anemia using fragments of the cosmic cube. So when she is doused with chemicals in an accident, she gained chemical altering powers that grants her abilities like super strength and the power to heat or freeze things on touch. And although she's initially afraid at what she may have done to herself, she eventually accepts the help and support of her community and is determined to help those who can't help themselves. The Young Avengers team proved to be pretty amazing, but everybody on the team knew who the most powerful hero was. Wiccan's magical skills gave him a variety of powers, and as the years went on, Wiccan only got more powerful. He's now married to the Emperor of the combined Skrull and Kree empires. And as powerful as Hulkling is, Wiccan is, I think, far more impressive. Wiccan has always been on the smaller side of things, like physically. He's not exactly heavily muscled, although he's in good shape, so it would be easy to think that he's relatively weak. However, much like his heavy hitter mother, the Scarlet Witch, Wiccan's powers make him a force to be reckoned with. He's not at a reality-altering level, but he's got it where it counts, and trust me, yeah, I'm good. Mary Jane Watson never needed to be a superhero, or even Spider-Man's girlfriend to be destined for greatness. But during 2022's Dark Web story arc, Mary Jane gains powers for herself, finally ready to begin leading a hero journey of her own after spending years supporting other heroes. As a riff on her most iconic line, MJ adopts the name Jackpot, along with a new costume, and joins a fight against crime. Look, from the moment she debuted on panel in her first full appearance in 1966's Amazing Spider-Man 42, she was driven by a desire to leap into adventure, to never let fear get in her way. In the face of a far more apprehensive and flustered Peter Parker, she's there, she knows what she wants. In retrospect, her iconic, unforgettable "Face it, Tiger, you just hit the jackpot" reads much like a call to action, and it defined her for so many years to come. Becoming a superhero is when MJ really gets to take the lead. The powers in the costume allow her to help others and make a difference in the world in a bigger way. But that determination to want to help and do more, it's just because it was so instilled in her from the get-go, it makes her incredible. As a character who first debuted in the Sins of Sinister timeline, John Ironfire proved so popular that he later appeared in the Earth 616 timeline. Ironfire is a mutant from Araco, with the power to turn his blood into metal that he then can control. In his first appearance in Storm and the Brotherhood of Mutants issue 1, Ironfire uses his powers to create metal claws, drawing comparisons to Wolverine, but his abilities prove to be so much more dynamic, because he uses that metal blood to create horns, protective armor, and even molten little weapons that he can fire at enemies. He serves as a right-hand man to Storm in her Brotherhood, and lives hundreds of years into the future, even adopting a look very similar to Odin. After the conclusion of Sins of Sinister, he arrives in the main 616 continuity, where it is revealed that he is a member of the White Sword's 100 Champions, an army that wages an eternal battle in the land of Amenth. Ironfire is the last of these warriors, arriving on Araco with the White Sword's all-powerful blade Purity. He warns the Iraqi mutants that Genesis, the wife of Apocalypse, is coming to conquer the planet. With his instantly iconic look and dynamic power set, Ironfire has the potential to be a hero with a crazy great legacy in the Marvel Comics. A refugee from a faraway part of the galaxy, Salan is perhaps the most powerful entity the Avengers have encountered in years. Sal has the ability to give superpowers to others in close proximity to her, and on her home planet, she was used to boost the strength of armies. She eventually fled and learned to keep her powers in check so that she couldn't be used as a weapon of war. In Avengers Beyond issue 2, her powers are meddled with by the Beyonder, and she begins involuntarily giving powers to people all across New York. Now, she's distraught by this, as well as by the fact that, well, the Avengers know of her existence. She's terrified that the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, the X-Men, anybody's gonna lock her up, only to bring her out to fight like Thanos or Galactus. Black Panther and Iron Man are able to dampen her powers, but later her neighbors force her to give them the powers of the Avengers. You know, stuff like Thor, stuff like She-Hulk, Captain Marvel. Even more terrifying, she is able to grant one mortal the powers of the Beyonder, one of the most powerful beings in the universe with the ability to shape reality itself. Although it would be her worst nightmare come to life, if Cell were to join the Avengers in a fight against an all-powerful foe, she might be able to give them the boost they need to prevail. Insane! Somnus, this dream-controlling hero, made quite an impactful debut in the pages of Marvel Voices, Pride #1. So in the story, Carl Valentino, a closeted mutant, hooked up with Dakin, showing him what what life would be like with him in a dream. However, when Dakin found out decades later that Carl died without ever coming out, the clawed hero had him resurrected by the Five, thus allowing the hero, now named Somnus, to live life as his true self. Overall, Somnus' design on its own is just cosmic brilliance. Adam Warlock is one of the most powerful heroes in the Marvel Universe, which makes sense since he was created to be the perfect living specimen. His creators intended to use him for their own selfish ends, but he rebelled, became a hero instead. Well, Eve Warlock's origin shares many similarities. Created by the High Evolutionary to replace Adam, Eve first appears in Warlock Rebirth by Ron Mars and Ron Lim. Eve has the same cosmic powers of matter and energy manipulation as Adam. After initially fighting her counterpart, she also rebels against her creator and refuses to kill Adam for the High Evolutionary. They team up to defeat him, and after the High Evolutionary flees, she sets off on a quest to find him and make him pay for his crimes. One might not expect the nephew of Amanda Waller to be a hero, and perhaps neither does said nephew. Archie never wanted these powers, nor did he seemingly want to work as a psychic killer for Amanda Waller as a former Argus agent. Deadeye's true motives have not been revealed, but the fact that he did not kill the villain sent to take his life perhaps proves that he is morally corrupted, but still good at heart. Deadeye has a bone to pick with Waller, especially for the current unknown treatment of him and his brother. Look, he's got an impressionable outfit and some really cool powers. He's got psychokinesis. He can tap into the astral plane. Clark Kent is learning a lot about Metropolis' history in the pages of Superman, and during a blackout caused by an upgraded parasite, the Man of Steel was weaker than ever after a run-in with the power-draining foe. However, he bumped into Marilyn Moonlight, a mysterious and legendary figure from the Metropolis' old days. Well, Moonlight has such intense solar-based abilities that she was able to heal Clark and give him a serious power bump.
Coming in at number 10 today is Lord Mar-Vell. Mar-Vell of the Kree was Marvel Comics' original Captain Marvel, and he was also the first Marvel superhero to permanently pass away when he succumbed to cancer in 1982's The Death of Captain Marvel. The character has reappeared as visions or in flashbacks and obviously in alternate realities, but the one we will focus on today is Mar-Vell of the Cancerverse. It's just a really cool and creative idea. Basically, on his infamous deathbed, the many angled ones contact and corrupt the dying Mar-Vell, granting him new powers which he used to transmute the other heroes, and with Mar-Vell as their lord, they took down the Avatar of Death itself, which in turn completely destroyed Death, allowing the many angled ones to invade their reality.
Number 9. Ultron. Ultron was created by writer Roy Thomas and artist John Buscema, and made his first appearance in Avengers issue number 54 back in 1968. He's an advanced AI with a highly intelligent and malevolent personality, initially created by Dr. Henry Pym, you know, the original Ant-Man. As a peacekeeping robot, Ultron eventually gained sentience and became obsessed with the idea of eliminating humanity, viewing it as the root cause of conflict and suffering in the entire world. He possesses superhuman strength, an incredibly high level of intelligence, durability, and the ability to upgrade and improve himself, making him a very scary villain by my view of things. As an artificial intelligence, Ultron has the ability to control and manipulate advanced technology, and often creates armies of robotic drones called Ultron Sentries to carry out his plans, with his primary goal being to replace humanity with an entire race of robotic beings he calls Ultronics. Now, unlike many villains who have, human motivations or emotions, Ultron's cold, calculating nature, devoid of human empathy or conscience, makes him particularly chilling. Once again, he views humans as inherently flawed and disposable. Outside of just the comics, the possibility of a real-life Ultron raises existential questions about the potential dangers of creating advanced AI and the consequences of unchecked technological progress, which is something that terrifies me on a regular basis. Overall, Ultron's combination of intelligence, ruthlessness, technological prowess, and his lack of human qualities contributes to his reputation as a genuinely scary and memorable villain in the Marvel Universe.
Number 8. The Void. Similar to Lord Mar-Vell, the Void is essentially taking the strongest and brightest character and creating a villain that is a sick and twisted version of that. A large part of what makes the Sentry so much more interesting is that while he is essentially like a god-like superhero who inspired all the other heroes, he also has a dark persona called the Void. The Void went on a rampage that took the lives of around 1 million people and almost destroyed Manhattan itself, and so the Sentry made the decision, with other heroes like Reed Richards and Doctor Strange, to cause the entire world to forget about the Sentry himself. Now, in New Avengers from 2004 and 2005, the Sentry comes back to the world, and through a series of events, the Void also returns. Full rosters of the Avengers, X-Men, and the Fantastic Four all went to take on the Void, and they couldn't do a damn thing. Only the Sentry himself could really subdue the Void, and it, in classic supervillain fashion, vowed to just come back. And it totally did. In this siege event, Norman Osborn decided to attack Asgard, and he used the Sentry to do this. The problem is, the Sentry ended up unleashing the Void, and it totally obliterated Asgard completely, taking out Loki in the process. This did actually branch off into a what-if story where the Void was never stopped and destroyed every superhero on Earth, and then went off into the universe to basically do the same thing everywhere else.
Number 7. Dracula. This might be my vampire-loving bias coming into play, but I think the way Dracula is portrayed in the Marvel Comics is quite scary, and that's coming from someone that's usually more enamored with him than scared by him. Hey, to each their own. So Dracula is a prominent character in the comics, and he's portrayed as, the classic vampire figure. So the classy vampire made his first appearance in Tomb of Dracula in 1972, which was created by writer Marv Wolfman and artist Gene Colan. This comic series, along with many other Marvel horror titles of the era, contributed to the resurgence of interest in horror comics. Now he's based on the classic Bram Stoker depiction of the centuries-old vampire, cursed with immortality and supernatural powers. Like many traditional vampires, Dracula possesses superhuman strength, speed, agility, the ability to hypnotize and control the minds of his victims, transform into a bat or other creatures, and has an aversion to, the usual sunlight, garlic, crosses. He can also regenerate from most injuries, except for those inflicted by wooden stakes, through the heart, or exposure to sunlight. Dracula is often portrayed as the lord and ruler of Earth's vampires, commanding a vast army of followers and seeking to expand his dominion over both the human and vampire worlds. Now Dracula has clashed with numerous Marvel superheroes over the years, and these confrontations often involve battles against his little minions as well. If that isn't scary enough for you, Dracula's curse of immortality is deeply unsettling, since, he can't be killed by any conventional means. As a vampire, Dracula feeds on the life source of the living, and his ability to hypnotize and control the minds of his victims adds quite the psychological dimension to the fear he instills. Hey, loss of free will and autonomy is a terrifying concept. One notable encounter occurred in the storyline Avengers 185 and 86, published in 1979, when Dracula targets the Avengers after becoming obsessed with the Scarlet Witch. And I can't say I blame him for falling in love with her. Granted, his attempt to make her his bride leads to quite the confrontation.
Number 6. Knull. Knull existed long before even the Celestials in the 6th incarnation of the multiverse, where he existed in basically nothingness. But when the Celestials created the 7th multiverse, Knull was mad that he got woken up. So he created the all-black necro-sword and beheaded a Celestial. For this insane feat of power, he was banished to another void of nothingness, where he improved on the sword and eventually broke out into the universe, taking out various gods until he lost the necro-sword after being defeated by a mysterious god of light. Knull then goes on to make more and more symbiotes. Yes, the symbiotes like Venom and Carnage, who all share a hive mind under the control of Knull himself. These symbiotes, who are all terrifying in their own right, eventually rebel and imprison Knull inside the symbiote homeworld, Clintar. In the 2020 King in Black story, Knull escapes, again, and heads to Earth, where he faces off against literally all the heroes and even some of the villains. He's one of the strongest villains in Marvel Comics. He is immortal, super strong, instantly heals, can create an unlimited amount of symbiotes, some of which who have been incredibly powerful on their own, and he can control them all. The Silver Surfer had to use all the reserves of the power cosmic to just temporarily stop Knull. Thor, using the power cosmic and the Thor Force, was no match for Knull at all. Knull has awoken, enslaved, and controlled Celestials, and even defeated the Sentry, ripping him in half and absorbing the Void, who we just talked about. The only thing that defeated him was Eddie Brock's Venom wielding the Unipower, which is Captain Universe, the protector of the universe, and the opposite to literally everything that Knull represents.
Number 5. The Apocalypse Twins. So this duo made their first appearance in issue number 5 of Uncanny Avengers, which was only published in 2013, ergo making them the most recent villains to come into the universe that I'll be discussing today. So they're mutants and the twin descendants of the big supervillain Apocalypse, so yay! Being bad comes pretty honestly to them. Okay, technically their real names are Uriel and Iman, and they were initially created by writer Rick Remender and artist Olivier Coipel, but Apocalypse Twins does sound infinitely cooler. So they were raised by Clan Akaba, a cult dedicated to their dear dad, which aimed to bring about the return of the powerful mutant leader. In terms of specific scary powers, Uriel possesses the ability to manipulate and transmute organic matter, including the power to heal and create life, while Iman has time manipulation abilities, allowing her to see into the future and alter the time stream. The duo are skilled manipulators manipulators who use their powers and charisma to sway others to their cause, just like, your everyday narcissists. So that's another little tick on the pass list from me. The twins believed that they could save mutant kind by eliminating threats to mutants and humankind alike, and had a twisted vision of a better world and sought to achieve it through drastic means. I hate sounding like a broken record, but jeepers. Look, a perfect world does not exist when created by force. In terms of, the hell they've unleashed specifically on the Avengers, they created a team of the 4 Horsemen of Death to execute their plans and clashed with the Avengers and the X-Men, leading to a major conflict known as the Ragnarok Now storyline. The storylines involving the Apocalypse twins had lasting repercussions in the Marvel Universe, affecting relationships among mutants and superheroes. Their parentage plays obviously a very significant role in their menacing presence. As the offspring of Apocalypse, one of the most powerful and iconic villains in Marvel history, their genetic lineage implies an inherent potential for immense power and malevolence.
Number 4. Chthon. Chthon stands as one of the most powerful demons in existence in Marvel Comics, and his ancient origins make him comparable to the very archetype of evil itself. He predates even the likes of Mephisto and is often regarded as the closest embodiment of the devil in demonology in Marvel Comics. Chthon and his Ngari once ruled over Earth until they faced an assault by the angel Lucifer, an event that occurred long before Lucifer's rebellion against heaven and his ascent to rule over hell as the devil. Chthon's influence extends to the very roots of dark supernatural entities, including witches, werewolves, and vampires. He holds dominion over the most potent form of magic, known as chaos magic, the same mystical force harnessed by the Scarlet Witch herself. To put this into perspective, Scarlet Witch has reshaped the whole of reality with just a fraction of Chthon's power. His counterpart, Oshter, is one of the essential components of the Vishanti, which is a triumvirate that actively opposes Chthon and supplies Doctor Strange with his power. In response to Chthon's malevolent dark hold, they created the Book of Vishanti, a beacon of light against the Book of Darkness. Even powerful beings such as Dormammu and Mephisto invoke Chthon's name when casting their most formidable spells. Chthon's presence alone nearly corrupted and permanently incapacitated the Sorcerer Supreme, Doctor Strange. Defeating him is an arduous task, and even when achieved, it often results in his banishment back to his personal dimension, the other realm, where he's basically untouchable.
Number 3. Korvac. So Michael Korvac, commonly known as Korvac, first appeared in issue number 3 of Giant-Sized Defenders back in 1975. Created by writer Steve Gerber and artist Jim Starlin, Korvac is quite the complex character with a unique and powerful storyline. He started as an ordinary human computer technician, but underwent a transformation after encountering the Badoon, an alien race. This transformation granted him incredible powers, including, energy manipulation, telekinesis, and matter transmutation, making him pretty near godlike in terms of abilities. Yikes! Korvac possesses nearly limitless powers, including, once again, the ability to manipulate reality itself. He's also not only physically powerful, but incredibly intelligent. Driven by a desire for order and perfection, he embarked on a quest to reshape the universe according to his own vision. While his motives weren't purely evil, the way he pursued them brought him into conflict with the Avengers, ergo how he earned a spot on our list today. One of his most notable storylines, which was the Korvac saga, is a pivotal moment in Marvel Comics history, since it challenged the Avengers on multiple levels, both morally and physically, and had pretty far-reaching consequences. Once again, Korvac's godlike powers, intelligence, and the existential threats he posed to the entire universe made him a pretty memorable villain. His character is a great example of how complexity and moral ambiguity can add depth to a supervillain, making him more than just, a one-dimensional antagonist.
Number 2. Carnage. The red symbiotes always seem to be the worst of the worst, and the one that would be born from Venom himself seems to be the worst of the worst of the worst of the worst. When Eddie Brock was briefly detached from the Venom symbiote, he was imprisoned, and his cellmate was none other than Cletus Cassidy, a psychotic killer serving 11 consecutive life sentences in Rikers Island. When Venom showed up and bust Eddie out of prison, it produced its first offspring as a result of Thanos seeking the Infinity Gems out in space. I don't know how those two connect, but that's just what happened. This offspring would be Carnage, and it was left in the cell when Venom and Eddie escaped, bonding with Cletus Cassidy through a wound in his hand. Meaning, the bond they formed was on a blood level, and it would be nearly impossible to break that. Despite that, there have been other characters that have taken on the symbiote. Norman Osborn was a notable one when he became the Red Goblin and was absolutely terrifying. And then I would be silly to not mention that the Grendel Dragon symbiote had part of its himself merge with Carnage to create an incredibly terrifying version of the symbiote known as Dark Carnage that absolutely put up a hell of a fight against Venom and others. Now, Carnage is back yet again, and he is reaching a level of power that puts him on the cosmic map as he is constantly upgrading himself with all kinds of tech and magic to be able to face Eddie Brock, who has become the King in Black of the symbiote race.
Number 1. Thanos. Created by writer and artist Jim Starlin, Thanos made his first appearance in Iron Man issue number 55 back in 1973. He's known for his distinctive appearance and as a towering purple-skinned alien with a heavily muscled physique and deep-set glowing eyes. Yeah, that makes sense. Thanos is obsessed with the concept of death and seeks to impress Mistress Death, a personification of death in the Marvel Universe, and visually speaking, I can't blame him for wanting to impress her. To gain her favor, he often engages in grandiose and destructive acts, including seeking to wipe out half of all life in the universe. Thanos possesses a vast array of superhuman abilities, including super strength, durability, and agility, not to mention that he's highly intelligent and a strategic mastermind. Despite being a villain, he exhibits moral complexity and genuinely believes that his actions are necessary for the greater good, even if they involve mass destruction. The level of delusion there might just be what scares me the most. Oh, and tiny thing, Thanos also poses a cosmic level threat to the entire universe, since his plans often involve consequences on a cosmic scale, making him a particularly dangerous foe. Nope.
Number 10. Dormammu. One of the most powerful magical villains in the Marvel Universe is definitely Dormammu, especially if you end up going to the Dark Dimension to face him. Here, Dormammu reigns supreme, and so his power is considered limitless. I don't know about you, but if Dormammu is ruling, I'm pretty much just going to stay out of the Dark Dimension, I think. I think that's a good idea if he's there. At one point, Doctor Strange even ended up as Dormammu's prisoner in the comics, trapped in the Dark Dimension alongside his defenders, and for a surprisingly lengthy period of time too. In fact, Strange almost gave up hope that he'd actually even get out at one point. Dormammu himself is composed of mystical energy. He's basically like a big ball of flaming magic. He's virtually immortal, while in his dimension can manipulate matter as he sees fit, can control the elements, and can change shape and size at will. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, be sure to let us know that you love us by clicking that like button. Number 9. Dracula. When we think of scary villains in general, many of us probably normally think of scary monsters that we've seen in movies and read about in iconic literature, like Dracula. Well, Dracula, thanks to Dracula being considered public domain, he also exists in most comic book realities as well, including that of Marvel Comics. And guess what? Doctor Strange has also fought against him. In fact, if it weren't for Doctor Strange, Dracula may have never been defeated. Doctor Strange not only defeated Dracula, but at the same time also successfully defeated all vampires on Earth. It's true. How did he do this? By possessing the knowledge of and utilizing the Montesi formula. This isn't Strange's only tie to the world of vampires either. Doctor Strange also has a brother who became a vampire, and he has crossed paths with Chthon, who is believed to have been the one to create a few different kinds of supernatural beings, including, you guessed it, vampires. Number 8. Cyttorak. Doctor Strange actually wields the bands of Cyttorak, tying him directly to this villain. But you probably know Cyttorak better for his influence over Juggernaut, the X-Men villain who is the stepbrother of Professor Charles Xavier, aka Professor X. Cain Marko, Charles' stepbrother, was the avatar of Cyttorak for a long time, having come into contact with Cyttorak's gem and gaining immense power, also being made to act as Cyttorak's agent on Earth. Cyttorak himself is a demon and has also been worshipped as a god. He is focused on and symbolizes heavily the concept of destruction, known as the Lord of Oblivion and the Destroyer. He was at his most powerful when he was on Earth, but eventually became banished from Earth and was forced to return to his home dimension known as the Crimson Cosmos. He actually made his first full appearance in Doctor Strange Sorcerer Supreme issue number 44. I wonder actually, remember how we used to say that Cyclops' eyes are like a portal to a world filled with energy? That was a thing people used to say. I wonder if that was the same world that Cyttorak was from, just because like Crimson Cosmos makes me think of a world that's just pure like red energy. I don't know if that's what it's like in Cyttorak's dimension, but that's a headcanon that's in my mind now, so. Number 7. Three Mothers. Death of Doctor Strange is an overarching story and miniseries that really has it all. It has drama, mystery, romance, heartbreak, and of course, lots of horrifying moments to just round it all out. The story delivers on what the title promises, the death of Doctor Strange. After his death, it is revealed Strange had some fail-safes in place to help him actually solve his own murder. A past version of Strange appears and ends up hot on the trail of solving his own murder with the help of magical allies such as as Wong and Clea. We're also introduced to the Three Mothers, villains who live to feed another possibly even more terrifying entity who's actually their own master, known as the Peregrine Child. Number 6. Chthon. Doctor Strange is one of the few who is strong enough to actually fight against Chthon. For those who are not familiar, Chthon is often attached to Scarlet Witch in Marvel Comics and is a demonic elder god, one of the oldest entities in the Marvel Universe. He is the one who is often believed to have granted Scarlet Witch her chaos magic abilities and has been known from time to time to possess Wanda as such, using her as his host. Doctor Strange is an immensely powerful magic user and is actually one of the few who can resist Chthon's influence and avoid becoming Chthon's mindless puppet. Strange has fought against Chthon many times, including when Scarlet Witch was possessed by Chthon during Secret Empire, with Strange being the one to actually free Wanda from Chthon's influence. Number 5. Nightmare. Nightmare is one of Doctor Strange's first ever villains. In fact, the first ever Doctor Strange villain in terms of comic book appearances. Nightmare made his first appearance alongside Doctor Strange, who also made his debut appearance in issue 110 of Strange Tales, released back in April of 1963. What makes Nightmare a villain to be feared? He plagues his victims using nightmares, reveling and finding power in their fear. Nightmare has been known in the comics for palling around in the past with the equally, if not more terrifying, baddie, Shuma-Gorath. Nightmare is also in essence immortal. As long as people dream, he will continue to exist. He is the ruler of the Nightmare Dimension, one of the splinter realms of the Dream Dimension, and is actually considered to be the most powerful of the Splinter Realms rulers. Number 4. Shuma-Gorath. Shuma-Gorath is one of the Great Old Ones, and many-angled ones, basically a Marvel version of an Elder God. Like Dormammu, he is also known to be one of the Lords of Chaos, although it's been kinda unclear throughout the comic lore as to whether there truly are multiple of those, or just one Lord of Chaos, who kinda like continues to be renamed throughout history. The many-angled ones are known for being one of the oldest kinds of entities in the Marvel Universe. Shuma-Gorath has returned to Earth many times, and set up as a god there, being worshipped even on Earth before the sinking of Atlantis, where he demanded blood sacrifices. That's how you know he's evil and he's scary. Number 3. Umar. Umar is the sister of Dormammu. She is known as a powerful sorceress and villain who sometimes works alongside her brother when she's not busy devising her own devious plots, which sometimes involve basically getting back at her brother for something. While many people think of Dormammu as being the more terrifying of the two of these beings, Umar was actually also very active in helping to conquer the Dark Dimension. In fact, she may have even ended up the ruler of the Dark Dimension in Dormammu's place if she hadn't been exhausted due to dealing with the mindless ones. Umar is just as terrifying, if not at times I would say more so, than her brother. Number 2. Death. Death has to be one of the most frightening villains that Doctor Strange has fought against. Although sometimes Death isn't really a villain and is more like a neutral being. But I do also mean literally fought against, if you're wondering. I don't just mean like, oh, when Doctor Strange had to face Death. No, I mean literally fought. When most people think Death in regards to the Marvel Universe, they think of Mistress Death, the pretty woman that embodies the concept whom Thanos is in love with and whom in the comics he destroyed half of all life in the cosmos in an attempt to impress. However, Death can take many different forms, and in Doctor Strange, Sorcerer Supreme issue number 55, Death is a creepy looking skeleton instead, who comes to claim Strange, threatening to take Strange back to its realm after claiming Strange's life. Here, Death torments Strange, trying to like sort of basically get him to lose his willpower here and cave in, give up, as the issue's main antagonist by making him relive the loss of his family, with him re-experiencing the loss of his sister, his brother, and his parents. Yeah, if you didn't know, Strange has siblings, he's lost them, and he's lost a lot of people. Like, Strange actually has a really tragic life. We should do a like top 10 worst things that have happened to Doctor Strange if we haven't already. Number 1. Mephisto. Mephisto is often thought of as the devil of Marvel. He rules over his own hellish dimension and is known for making lots of contracts with heroes that usually result in them being very unhappy in the end, despite getting what they wanted, much like the devil in various tales and lore. He's not someone you wanna make a bargain with, as typically there are conditions, which means that Mephisto often comes out on top in the end, even though, you know, He gave you what you wanted. Mephisto is both demonic and magical in terms of his origin and classification in Marvel's various realms of categories for characters. And if he plays his cards right, he can even use his powers to warp the reality of the universe, which we've actually seen him successfully do a few different times. Unlike most other characters in Marvel Comics, Mephisto is one of the rare few who have actually had success with making his changes to reality permanent. Mephisto is also a formidable foe in one-on-one combat, being that he is also super strong, durable, fast, and virtually immortal. Trust me, you wouldn't want to dance with this devil in the pale moonlight.
Number 10. Doomsday. I have to just assume that Batman is afraid of Doomsday, and there are multiple reasons I believe this. For starters, anytime I've seen Batman even attempt to get involved in a fight with Doomsday, he is never throwing punches. He is either staying the heck out of the way, maybe only acting as a distraction, or he is powered up by some serious magical artifacts. Secondly, Batman is incredibly smart. He knows how hard it is for someone to take down Superman, and the fact that Doomsday is one of the few characters who is able to do it, and with such brutality, there is no way Batman is not intimidated by this monster. I refuse to believe it. Honestly, my favorite point of proof is seeing what Ben Affleck's Batman does in Batman vs Superman. Say what you want about that movie, but Batman jumping around the battlefield just trying his best to stay out of the way? Hilarious. Number 9. Prometheus. As a dramatic inversion of Batman, the tragic figure of Prometheus presents a serious threat to the Dark Knight. Enraged by the passing away of his parents at the hands of law enforcement, Prometheus vows to fight the law with the same intensity that Batman seeks to uphold it. Backed by ludicrous sums of money, Prometheus trains diligently and becomes the bane of police officers and military men across America. Armed with an all-powerful helmet, Prometheus earns godlike powers that give him the strength of the best fighters on Earth. It's no wonder that when he breaks into the Justice League Watchtower, he single-handedly beats the majority of the team, and Batman takes the majority of that shellacking. Prometheus runs the Dark Knight into the ground. It was the first showdown between the two orphans, and Prometheus takes the victory without any effort at all. Hey, are you liking this video? Well, then hit that thumbs up button, rookie. We need your support. Number 8. Zsasz. Victor Zsasz has a character trait that a few others on this list possess. He's just completely and utterly insane. Zsasz scares Batman for one main reason. Whenever he is not locked up, it's almost guaranteed that lives will come to an end, which just ups the ante because every escape of this killer becomes a race against the clock for Batman. He needs to bring him down fast before he adds another scar to his body. Every single one of those scars signifies a failure for Batman. Zsasz is a man with absolutely no form of pity or morals, and he will never stop unless he passes away, but we know Batman will never do that. In an alternate story, Injustice, Zsasz is even responsible for the passing of Alfred Pennyworth, which was not supposed to happen, but because Zsasz is Zsasz, it did. Number 7. Thomas Wayne Batman. Other versions of Batman always have the potential to be a scary thought for our Batman, or anyone, really. But when that version of Batman is Bruce Wayne's own father, who completely destroys him emotionally, teams up with Bane, and is trying to stop Batman being Batman so he can have a normal life, it's an incredibly interesting idea for a character, honestly. But with all the daddy issues Batman has, for his alternate reality father to be so twisted and brutal has got to be a terrifying thought. But what did Thomas do that was so bad? Well, let me tell you. Alongside Bane, he ruined Batman and Catwoman's wedding, causing her to leave him at the altar, nearly had Batman send Mr. Freeze to the afterlife for a crime he did not commit, kidnapped Damian Wayne, hired the KG Beast to take out Dick Grayson, he had Bane put Alfred Pennyworth in the ground, then Thomas incapacitated Bruce with fear toxin and kidnapped him. He dug up the coffin of Martha Wayne, wishing to use the Lazarus Pit to resurrect Martha so that they could all be a happy family again. He went more than a little overboard is what I'm saying. Number 6. The Batman Who Laughs. Another version of Batman, only this time it's basically the ultimate evil version of himself. A Jokerized Bruce Wayne. He is just absolutely awful. He has all the smarts and skill of Batman himself, but the completely bonkers unpredictability of Joker. And this combo causes the Batman Who Laughs to become one of the biggest threats to the entire multiverse. Now, being a Jokerized Bruce Wayne, he has a few differences to the man himself. He's thinner and faster. faster, but physically weaker. Unfortunately, physicality in battle with this guy doesn't really matter. He's got backup in the form of his Dark Knights, and he has backup plans on top of backup plans as any Batman worth his salt would have. This guy put his consciousness into a Batman with the power of Dr. Manhattan and destroyed Perpetua, the first creator of the multiverse and the mother of the Monitor, Anti-Monitor, and the World Forger. Number 5. Pig. Professor Pig is a villain that came to be during a time when Batman stories were becoming incredibly dark, and Pig himself has to be one of the darkest villains of that era. His methods completely disgust the Dark Knight. He looks like a character straight out of a horror or slasher movie, and his obsession with physical perfection, like in the myth of Pygmalion, became part of the reason he surgically mutilates his victims, turning them into his mind-controlled servants called Dolotrons. If his crimes weren't horrifying enough, then just look at him. Yeah. Get out of my nightmares, thank you. Bye. Number 4. Scarecrow. With Scarecrow, fear is the name of the game. I don't believe Batman is actually scared of Scarecrow himself, but Scarecrow has used his fear toxin to debilitate and send the Dark Knight running on multiple occasions, and that makes him a unique foe that puts Batman in a position he doesn't often find himself in. Batman is a physical powerhouse with a mind that is exceedingly sharp, but his mind is also partially his biggest weakness because he has some serious psychological issues, and Scarecrow's whole shtick is manipulating that kind of thing. When Scarecrow pops up on the scene, the Dark Knight knows that something terrifying is coming his way. Number 3. The Court of Owls. Probably the oldest, most secretive, and most profitable group in Gotham City's underworld. When Bruce Wayne became a threat to them, they put Batman through one hell of a psychological ringer, and possibly one of the darkest Batman stories ever. He gets trapped in a huge Court of Owls maze underneath Gotham City, and trying to make his way through it, Batman goes through physical and psychological tests that nearly break the Dark Knight. But the court has so many feathers in all areas of Gotham and Bruce Wayne's own life. They may have even had a hand in the passing of his parents. Possibly. And we haven't even started talking about the Talons, a group of brainwashed and undead robot-like assassins. The combo of psychological warfare and the deadly Talons nearly brought Bruce Wayne to the pearly gates. Number 2. Bane. His name says it all, as Bane has been the bane of Batman on multiple occasions. The Bane we saw in the Dark Knight Rises movie was fantastic, and he absolutely instilled fear in Batman, but the comic version of that same story goes to a whole other level. With his master plan being even more well thought out and damaging to Batman, he unleashed Arkham Asylum on Gotham, putting Batman on the ropes as he has to chase down all the escaped criminals. Bane studied Batman. He utilizes his own weaknesses and completely destroys Batman, breaking his back in one of the most infamous comic book moments ever. More recently though, Bane brought Batman even lower than when he broke his spine because he broke Bruce's heart by snapping the neck of Alfred Pennyworth. Any battle Batman has fought against Bane has been with the help of his allies, and that's because Batman knows that he can't take on Bane alone. Number 1. The Joker. I think if there is one person who scares Batman more than anyone, it's gotta be the Joker. They have had such a long and complex history with each other, and I think because of that, and the Joker's obsession with the Bat, Joker knows all the ways to mess with Batman, and he's constantly coming up with new ones. He will go after anyone to get at Batman, and he will go through anyone just for the fun of it. He's unpredictable. Batman never knows for sure where he will strike and what he will do unless the Joker wants Batman to know. Everything is a game that he knows the rules to. The other thing about Joker is that he would never actually take the Dark Knight's life. In fact, I feel like he would probably destroy anyone who tries to. This just makes him more terrifying as he simply wants to be a constant cause of fear and anxiety for the Dark Knight, and he is.
Number 10. Uranos. While Thanos didn't outwardly appear to be nervous or afraid around his great uncle Uranos in the recent Eternals comic series, or at least in the one-shot issue that sort of tied into Eternals the Heretic, I'm not fully convinced that this was actually true. In fact, I might even think that Thanos was perhaps bluffing. This is because Uranos is known to be even more of a killer than his great nephew. Even if it didn't appear as though Thanos was affected by this knowledge, we already know from other experiences that Thanos does not like to have his purpose undermined in this way. He likes to be the best and greatest agent of death death, and Uranos, if not locked up, compete with him for that title, which likely means that Thanos, if Uranos were fully unleashed, would be afraid and intimidated by him, probably seeking to destroy him eventually. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love this video, if you love when we talk about Thanos, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 9. Mephisto. While in Infinity Gauntlet, it seems as though Thanos is actually playing Mephisto for a fool, making him in essence behave like a servant to him. In reality, it kinda seems more likely that Mephisto, in awe of Thanos' power, is actually along for the ride and looking for ways to manipulate him. This wouldn't be the first time Mephisto would do something like this in Thanos' life either. It is also implied in issue number 38 of the current Avengers run that Mephisto actually manipulated Thanos in his past as well, possibly even having a hand in encouraging Kid Thanos to join up with the Masters of Evil and take on the prehistoric Avengers. Also, Mephisto, or the collection of Mephistos, could later make a deal with them. Who knows? I personally think while Thanos might not see the threat that Mephisto is as a villain, that Thanos could fear and perhaps in the future will fear him when he realizes just how much Mephisto may have been manipulating him this whole time. After all, it was actually Mephisto in Infinity Gauntlet that kind of first helped plant the idea of Thanos snapping. Seriously, go back and read that issue, you'll see what I'm talking about. Number 8. Ultron. While Thanos may not have seen this coming in the What If Disney Plus streaming animated series episode, if he had, he likely would have been wise enough to have actually been afraid of Ultron. Ultron here is nuts. Here Ultron ends up becoming all-powerful after Thanos arrives on an already decimated Earth, because in this reality Ultron actually won. Thanos, having the rest of the Infinity Stones at this point, does not prove powerful enough to stop this alternate Ultron, who actually kills him just using the Mind Stone alone and takes the rest of the Infinity Stones for himself. Number 7. Kang the Conqueror. Kang the Conqueror is someone most people might underestimate in the world of comics. This is because he kinda has a ridiculous look in terms of his character design, and probably also because he's known for floating around in kinda like an invisible space chair. It's not the easiest look to adapt to a modern setting and have it feel, you know, anything but ridiculous. It just kind of, it's a look. However, Kang is also a time-traveling villain and the master of time. We have seen both Thanos and Kang reveal that each is intimidated at times by the other. And I know some people are probably gonna be like, but Amanda, what about the time Kang was like, I literally have been avoiding you in like every timeline? Well, there's another alternate reality where something different happens, okay? While Thanos might pack more of a physical punch, Kang could also probably just erase Thanos from existence if he really wanted to. And in an alternate reality at least, he has defeated Thanos using his power over time to basically turn him to dust. So that's also happened. Really, it could go either way. I'm very interested to see if there will be any interaction between these characters in the MCU. I know Thanos is gone, but what if he came back? I don't know. Number 6. Death. Not really a villain per se, though some could see her as such. Death is still definitely an antagonist at the very least. She is the embodiment of death, and I would say that Thanos both respects and fears her during his time pining after her. He is afraid of being rejected by her, that's for sure. Thanos has a complex relationship with death, being an agent of death as someone who also happens to be in love with it, and the feminine entity who embodies it. Thanos at one point pleaded with Death to stay with him after she left him in essence at the altar, following their fight in an alternate universe where King Thanos, as he had become, had pretty much destroyed all life in existence for her. But you know, still not good enough, Thanos. You gotta earn it. You gotta destroy all life, not almost all. Number 5. Magus. Adam Warlock and Thanos have been at each other's throats for years in the comics, but with Adam Warlock being a hero, Thanos wouldn't be particularly afraid of him, I'd say. In fact, the two have also teamed up together when they've needed to, so they've fought each other, but they've also worked together before, chiefly against the man they are both afraid of, Adam Warlock's evil counterpart, his evil version, Magus, who actually is like the dark side of his soul made manifest. Magus was actually created to be the champion of life, in contrast to Thanos, who is the champion of death, and as such the two have been sworn enemies since Magus' creation. He is meant to oppose Thanos, which he has attempted to do multiple times to varying success. At one point he demonstrated that he was an even match for Thanos when he got his hands on the Infinity Gauntlet, attempting to use it to bend and shape reality to his own whim. Didn't work out in the end, but hey, you know, he tried. Number 4. Dr. Doom. Well, really, God Emperor Doom, but still. Thanos also wasn't really intimidated by this version of Doom, but he should have been. Doom might seem like just a Terran with a big brain and some magic tricks in comparison to Thanos being a cosmic tyrant, but Doom is not to be trifled with, especially when he wields the powers of the Beyonder. Thanos attempted to fight Doom without much fear, and Doom responded by literally obliterating him, turning him to dust and bones with one mighty punch. And you might be wondering if this was some alternate warped Thanos, but no, it wasn't really. This was Thanos of the Black Cabal who had preserved himself along with his teammates in a life raft so they weren't altered at all during the creation of Doom's battle world in Secret Wars. Now granted, yes, Doom was augmented in terms of his power, but still, if Thanos remembered this moment, I'm sure he'd at least have a bit of fear when facing Doom in the future, because that's pretty wild. Number 3. Rot. Rot was the child of Thanos and Death that came to be after Thanos died, and in his death, he merged with the entity of Death. Rot as such was not really a person or corporeal being, but more of an abstract entity made manifest. Rot's power was so great for death and destruction that Death and Thanos themselves were actually forced to confront it, using their power to rip it asunder, when nothing else seemed to be able to harm it. Number 2. The Many-Angled Ones. What is a fate worse than death for Thanos? How about a fate where life and creation win, where death is defeated, so all that is left is untamed, uncontrolled, wild life? That is basically what the Cancerverse is. Although it doesn't have the most appealing name, the Cancerverse is actually known as such thanks to the fact that it came into existence after the original Captain Mar-Vell of an alternate world made a deal with the Many-Angled Ones to rid him of his cancer, basically by defeating death. However, without death to keep it in check, life became twisted and corrupted by how rampant it was. And the Many-Angled Ones were also now able to enter that reality, corrupting it further as they were basically eldritch gods. At one point, the Cancerverse plans to take over the whole multiverse, invading various other universes and sitting on the edge of reality, threatening to bleed into other worlds. Fortunately, Thanos returns to life and ends up manipulating Captain Mar-Vell basically into killing him in the Thanos Imperative, with Mar-Vell making an exception to the rule that nothing can die in their universe for Thanos, because he's like, you are so annoying, you gotta go. As such, because this Thanos is actually of Earth 616, his version of death is able to appear in the Cancerverse when he dies and allows it to be defeated basically. But even though this works to get to this point, it takes a lot of courage for Thanos, who is actually afraid of joining in the fight against the Cancerverse initially due to the absence of death in that world, which makes sense. I mean, he's kinda all about death, so I'd be pretty nervous about that too. Number 1. Thane. Thane is Thanos' son, and he definitely feared him because he literally returned to Earth to try and hunt Thane down and destroy him as a result of Thane's potential power surmounting his own. He's afraid that Thane will basically rise up and overtake him and basically end up being a better Thanos, I think. But in the end, this wasn't something that Thanos had to be particularly afraid of, it turned out. Even after Thane became empowered with the Phoenix Force, Thanos still managed to defeat him. And this was also at a point when Thanos himself seemed to be dying at this time in the comics. Thane ended up being stripped of the Phoenix Force and ended up sentenced to suffering a hell-like existence in the God Quarry for the rest of his life. Or, you know, at least until some writer remembers, oh yeah, he's still down in that God Quarry, and decides to get him out of there. Thane was also an Inhuman, and his powers are actually perfect for someone who is known to be Thanos' son. He had a Death Touch ability that, while untamed, could kill anyone within a certain radius, and he could also trap people in a state of living death through encasing them in amber, which sounds actually worse than dying to me.
Coming in at number 10 today is Carnage. I saw a lot of people didn't like how we said Knull would fear any of the symbiotes, and obviously not. It's just a list of strong symbiotes that could actually potentially cause a problem for Knull in the right circumstances. For example, Knull wouldn't fear Eddie Brock or Carnage, but they both took him out when they applied themselves and gained power boosts. Being a red symbiote, Carnage is quite a bit more volatile than others of his already violent race. He is unpredictable and possibly even stronger than Venom in terms of raw power, but he becomes even crazier after bonding with serial Cletus Cassidy. As Cletus was already a serial before becoming Carnage, the extra aggression caused by the bonding with a symbiote only made him more cruel and dangerous. Carnage was such a threat to Venom that the Lethal Protector decided to form a truce with his enemy, Spider-Man, in order to defeat him. Now, Carnage was able to create weapons as well as crazier powers like traversing data and phone lines to attack people on the other side. But Cassidy's Carnage is actually pretty weak if you compare him to some of the other symbiote's hosts, like Norman Osborn, who bonded with the symbiote and then used his Goblin Serum to become the utterly terrifying Red Goblin, or when it bonded with a fraction of the power of a symbiote dragon. But more recently, Carnage has been traveling the multiverse by itself, gaining incredibly powerful boosts to its power that have even allowed it to take the life of an alternate reality Knull, the symbiote god. Number 9. Payback. Payback is Mavis Trent, an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. who bonded with a symbiote that isn't exactly a member of the same race the other symbiotes like Venom and Carnage are. Her symbiote is more like an offshoot or cousin of the Clintar race. Payback is an energy-based symbiote rather than an organically based one, which as you can imagine makes her rather unique and pretty powerful, with some cool different symbiote powers to boot. While having all the usual superhuman enhancements, Payback can also fly and produce electromagnetic manipulation in the form of microwaves and electromagnetic pulses. The symbiote itself had previously bonded to her father and had imprinted with his personality and memories, which transferred to Mavis when they bonded. Now the symbiote also feeds off of its host's bliss without hurting them, which actually sounds quite lovely compared to regular symbiotes. The energy-based quality of Payback's ability is what gives me the reason to believe that it could pose a problem for Knull. This is pure speculation, like literally the rest of this list and the previous part, but given the sheer power of other light and energy-based heroes and how Knull is a god powered by darkness, I have to assume that Payback might actually be able to do some damage in the right circumstances, but we'll never know. Number 8. Mr. E. The symbiote god and creator Knull was able to manipulate the living beasts he commanded in a number of different ways, ultimately resulting in his army of symbiotes. But what kind of flew right over my head was that Knull went through a few experiments before getting the symbiotes just the way he wanted them. Mr. E is the alias of a primordial proto-symbiote created by Knull as one of those early experiments, of which there are indeed a few. The proto-symbiote developed his own plans of galactic conquest, traveling to Earth, taking a host in the form of Louise Tuttle, and then infecting a number of scientists at Cape Canaveral with offshoots of himself, turning them into shadow servants. This gave him a shot at using these scientists to modify a space shuttle to emit negatron particles intending to transform the sun into a black star. That would basically take us all off of the playing field, except of course for those Mr. E wanted to turn into shadow servants to serve him as his own universe-conquering shadow army. This act pitted him against Captain Universe and saw him defeated by that hero, but Mr. E was brought back by Knull, who decided to give his creation a second shot. So, wanting to impress Knull, Mr. E stole the ebony blade from the Black Knight in the past, creating eclipses and bringing him into conflict with Ulik the Troll under the request of Uatu the Watcher. Attacked by Spider-Man, King the Conqueror, Rocket Raccoon, and Captain Marvel, he was eventually defeated and given to the Collector, but I hope he comes back at some point. Number 7. Silence. Andrea Benton was accidentally bonded to a separated piece, or I guess we can call it a clone, of the Venom symbiote when Flash Thompson as Agent Venom tried to protect her, leading to her debut as the new sidekick Mania. Now Mania is pretty awesome and she looks super cool, but she's not that strong, and she was eventually separated from the Mania symbiote after she was possessed by a demonic Hellmark, later bonding with the reborn Scream symbiote, arguably the most powerful of the Life Foundation symbiotes. Now, later on, Carnage corrupted the Scream symbiote and Andy used her Hellfire to wipe it out for good, or so she thought. Turns out that Alchemax used the symbiote's remains alongside a sample of the Anti-Venom symbiote to create a somewhat brand new symbiote known as Silence. Andy bonded with the symbiote thinking it was Scream, but in actuality it was Silence. She gained a new corruptive touch deadly to other symbiotes, which would at least cause a problem for Knull's creations, coupled with the sonic scream. Now bonded with the right individual, I do think that Silence may have a shot at causing Knull some kind of problems. Number 6. Codex. In the current Venom series, we follow the parallel journeys of Eddie Brock and his son Dylan. Eddie's quest takes him through space and time as he grapples with his newfound godlike abilities as the new King in Black. Meanwhile, Dylan remains on Earth bonded with the Venom symbiote under the impression that his father has passed away. Unbeknownst to them, Eddie falls prey to a future version of himself, Meridius, the most formidable King in Black, whose enigmatic intentions unfold over the centuries. Now the key to saving Eddie from this lies in Dylan himself, who has discovered a hidden power within the Venom symbiote and within himself. In Venom number 15, Dylan unveils his newfound abilities as Codex, known as the quote Chainbreaker. He wields all black the necro-sword that Eddie obtained after defeating Knull. Dylan possesses the unique capability to sever a symbiote from the hive each time he bonds with it. With all black the necro-sword, he can extend this power to other symbiotes. An example of this is when he severs Bedlam's hand, which no longer regenerates because it's now disconnected from the Clintar hive mind. Dylan's extraordinary powers allow him to quote reap a symbiote from the hive. This signifies that he's the sole individual capable of standing against a King in Black, who wields near omnipotent power while connected to the hive. Dylan's ability also makes him the only one capable of permanently defeating a King in Black. Number 5. Bedlam. After Eddie Brock's ascension to Knull's former role as a Cosmic King in Black, Eddie was traveling the galaxy by inhabiting different symbiote bodies when he arrived in the Garden of Time after being transported to the future. There, he encountered another King in Black known as Bedlam, who was unstuck in time. Now this giant symbiote is a powerhouse even compared to the other King in Blacks across time, and that's actually because he's a future version of Eddie Brock's King in Black who is fueled by rage at knowing his entire existence is heading towards one outcome. As another King in Black who already defeated Knull to become a King in Black, yes, Knull would be afraid of Bedlam. Is this kind of cheating? Maybe a little bit, but it's what has to happen since you guys won't let us just have fun and talk about powerful symbiotes, so it's your fault. Number 4, the eventuality. On that note though, I mentioned before that Eddie Brock was heading towards one eventual future. That eventual future is called the eventuality, and that is another being that Knull would absolutely fear. As Eddie Brock travels through time as the King in Black, his timeline will branch many times over. Most branches will continue to perform the King in Black's work to maintain the universe from within, though some like Meridius, for example, unsuccessfully attempt to escape their responsibilities. All of these branches will work for longer than the lifespan of the universe before retiring to the unbeyond, which is the place that is the opposite of where the Beyonders are from, where they converge and become the eventuality. The eventuality supervises and occasionally intervenes to stop his past selves from becoming as destructive as Knull. Number 3, Agent Venom from Earth 1051. Originating from Earth 1051, Agent Venom made a dramatic entrance when the primary Eddie Brock and Dylan Brock were transported across the multiverse. Upon their arrival, they discovered a world dominated by the sinister symbiote Codex, whose oppressive rule was persistently challenged by Anne Weying, who is this Agent Venom, and her fellow symbiote heroes. In addition to contending with the overwhelming threat within their own world, Anne played a pivotal role in assembling a team of Venoms from various different universes. This alliance now stands as the last line of defense against the ambitions of the Carnage symbiote, which is seeking to gain godlike power. Anne's incarnation of the Venom symbiote may not be inherently more powerful than its counterparts, but the resilience and tenacity displayed by both her and the symbiote throughout their trials pretty much serves as a testament to their enduring strength. Not to mention, she and her squad are one of the only things standing against a Carnage that has already taken the life of an alternate Knull the symbiote god. She may not be able to do much alone, but she's one heck of a big kahuna, so yeah. Number 2, the Darkhold symbiote. First appearing in Carnage Volume 2 Number 6, an offshoot of the Darkhold augmented Carnage symbiote bonded with a South African teenager, Jubilile Van Scotter. This symbiote established a psychic link between her and Cletus Cassidy that enabled her to help the anti-symbiote task force track him down. Now Jubilile was initially unable to manifest the symbiote beyond it imbuing her with superhuman abilities, but when Carnage summoned the Eldritch god Chthon, she assimilated the toxin and raised symbiotes into her own symbiote. Now, due to Jubilile lacking any hatred or malice in her heart, once manifested, the symbiote, unlike its progenitor and siblings, lacked the fangs and claws customary to other symbiotes. Further empowered by the psychic energies of the world through the Darkhold's eldritch magic, Jubilile's symbiote transformed into basically an angelic knight and became powerful enough to banish Chthon back into Calais, but the symbiote and its absorbed siblings seemingly perished immediately afterwards. Its interaction with Chthon and being able to send it back makes me think it could probably do something to Knull too, but we'll never know. And finally, in at number 1, it's the Serpent. Coming out of left field here, Donald Blake is the human form Odin created to house Thor when he banished his son to Earth to teach him humility. Now sadly, Donald Blake broke bad in 2020, hating how he was sent to a mystical world every time Thor took his godly form. There, he ended up taking the life of the Midgard serpent, absorbed its power, and mixed it with the Odin force to try and take out all the Asgardians. Now thankfully he was stopped and Loki imprisoned him, but unfortunately a symbiote child created from the King in Black Bedlam, who we talked about before, bonded and took control of the denizen of Limbo known as Darkoth, and infused with magic and wielding a Prometheum symbiote hammer that it created called Helnir, it attacked Asgard, being opposed by Thor, Loki, and Meridius disguised as Eddie Brock. After defeating Bedlam's child, Meridius reveals himself taking the hammer, and Thor destroys Meridius in an awesome display of power that also melts the symbiote Prometheum hammer. As Meridius escapes into the time stream, the amalgamated symbiote metal hammer leaks through Asgard's ground and it finds its way to the place that Donald Blake is being held, dripping down right onto his face and mutating him into a hybrid of himself, the powerful symbiote hammer, and creating the Serpent. Now given the amount of power put into everything I just talked about, I have no doubt that this new Serpent could oppose Knull if it ever had the chance, which it probably won't. Number 10, Toxin. The son of Carnage, Toxin was believed to be the most powerful symbiote, being the 1000th symbiote in the lineage of Venom, with Venom being the 998th and Carnage being the 999th. The raw power of Toxin was so great that he was feared even by the King in Black, Knull, creator and leader of the symbiotes. Carnage became aware that he was pregnant with a new symbiote, however, even before the birth, he felt only disgust for his future newborn for fear that it would become more powerful than he is, but also because he was grossed out that normally being a male, he could even be, quote, pregnant with a symbiote in the first place, and that's really weird to me, but that's what happened. He therefore resolved to eliminate his offspring. Luckily though for Toxin, Venom, who quickly learned the news, decided to protect the new symbiote and take him under his wing. So, trained by Venom and bonded with a New York City cop named Patrick Mulligan, Toxin's powers remained restrained and focused on doing good. His childlike personality prevented him from unleashing his full power, which is great because he has quite the power. Toxin resists heat and sound better than other symbiotes can. He can track anyone and has all the combined strength of both Venom and Carnage. Now more recently, Toxin also developed a venomous bite, assuming you would survive the massive bite in the first place. Mulligan was eventually taken out and his symbiote forcibly bonded to Eddie Brock before it found a new host named Bren Waters during the King in Black event.
At number 9 is Grendel. Billions of years back, Knull set loose a lineup of dominating symbiotes designed to obliterate everything in their path. Among these, the Grendel emerged as a dragon of sheer power. After landing on the Earth way back in the 6th century, it engaged in a tumultuous showdown with Thor, leading to its entrapment within a glacier. But its slumber was disturbed when S.H.I.E.L.D. unearthed it centuries later. Then the Maker came along, a brilliant yet controversial figure in the symbiote saga, who got his hands on a fragment of Grendel. His intentions were to use it for his symbiote-related experiments. However, the plot thickens. You see, the cult of Knull had different plans, snagging the Grendel shard and connecting it with the lifeless body of Cletus Cassidy. What ensued was a merging of unprecedented magnitude, reviving Cletus and binding him to Knull. This fusion birthed a new chapter in the Symbiote Chronicles, transforming the Grendel piece into a daunting doppelganger of the original Carnage symbiote. The result was a creature possessing not just the legacy of Grendel, but also the essence of Carnage, evolving into an entity that redefines the term formidable.
Hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, you can support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. Only if you want to. You don't have to, but you know. It'd be nice.
It's free.
Thanks! Number 8, Anti-Venom. The Anti-Venom symbiote was created when Venom bonded with Eddie Brock after the man was cured of cancer by Mr. Negative. Now, thanks to Mr. Negative's healing powers, Eddie's antibodies gave birth to a new kind of symbiote when Venom tried to rebond, inverting the black and the white of the original Venom symbiote costume. Oh, right, and this is now a symbiote with no consciousness of its own, effectively making it a benign biological white Venom costume controlled by Eddie Brock. Now, it possessed the same strengths as its Venom predecessor, but importantly, has different anti-symbiote powers. His touch is basically caustic to symbiotes and can destroy them with long enough exposure. Anti-Venom can cure people affected by things like radioactivity, parasites, diseases, and certain substances. And he still has all the enhancements afforded by a symbiote. To make this symbiote even more impressive though, Anti-Venom is resistant to heat and sound, the symbiote's most significant weaknesses. The Anti-Venom symbiote was recently used to throw a wrench in Carnage's plan to become an extremely powerful version of himself, although it was only momentary.
At number 7 is Zux. Zux, making its debut in X-Men Kingbreaker number 2 in January of 2009, represents an extraordinary outlier among symbiotes, standing as one of the most formidable entities within its species. Now, what distinguishes Zux, besides its unique name, is its very unique mutation granting it unparalleled control over hosts, in stark contrast to the typical symbiotic relationship observed in other members of its kind. You see, unlike conventional symbiotes that form a cooperative bond with their hosts, Zux deviates by completely consuming its hosts, extracting substance from their organic essence rather than merely feeding off of adrenaline and other organic chemicals. Initially incarcerated by the Shi'ar, Zux subsequently emerged as a powerful tool in various cosmic clashes, exhibiting a brutal and savage nature that cemented its reputation as one of the most menacing and lethal symbiotes to traverse the galaxy's expanse.
Number 6, Meridius. Meridius is an extremely new and pretty unique villain, being the one pulling the strings behind the events of the current Venom run. Now, when Eddie Brock defeated Knull and became the new King in Black, he began to play with the ability to switch from symbiote to symbiote within the symbiote hive mind with just the thought. And then he pushed it even further. Trying to see if he could move not only through space but through time, this eventually led Eddie into contact with other Kings in Black throughout time and to Meridius. Now, it turns out that Meridius is actually a temporal offshoot of Eddie Brock, who had become unmoored in time following the loss of his physical body and was embroiled in a time loop started by himself to ensure his own existence and to try and stop himself from becoming the eventuality, which is a kind of antithesis to the Beyonders, which Eddie Brock will always eventually become. Rejecting his true purpose, Meridius created the Garden of Time, where he manipulates not only his past selves, aka Eddie, Finnegan, Bedlam, Wild, and Tyro, but also Dylan Brock and the Venom symbiote, trying to use them to change his own future. Being a millennia-old King in Black, I have no doubt Knull would fear Meridius.
At number 5 is Big Mother. The thumbnail, we're finally there. Big Mother, originating from the ancient tale of Beowulf, is one of the most powerful symbiotes out there. This, basically demon, possesses an incredible array of abilities. Her strength, durability, and stamina are off the charts, making her virtually immune to aging, diseases, and many forms of harm. Donning a demonic appearance, she has a range of powers, possibly sorcery, and shape-shifting abilities, retaining her terrifying visage. Big Mother is a vicious predator equipped with razor-sharp claws and fangs capable of consuming entire individuals whole. Her demonic nature evokes fear and panic attacks among those accustomed to confronting these supernatural beings. Her personality even reflects her demonic origins. See, she takes pleasure in sadistic acts, especially devouring humans alive, but oddly enough, she's protective of her own kind, displaying a nurturing side towards her offspring. She's notably vengeful, particularly towards Beowulf for his actions against her son Grendel. Unwilling to be manipulated for others' gains, she pursues her own desires, as seen in her unexpected venture as a professional wrestler, relishing in the violence and the chance to devour her opponents, a threat taken seriously despite many assuming it's just part of her act.
Number 4, All Black necro-sword. All Black, initially born as a necro-sword, was the first ever symbiote created from the shadow of the evil deity Knull, and softened with the divine power of a slain celestial head, because that's just how it goes. It was basically a sword created from living darkness, and it gives its wielder an exceeding level of power and capability, enough to be able to slay gods. After removing the All Black away from Knull, the alien Gore is corrupted by both his hatred of gods and the dark symbiote itself, and he continues the quote, butchering of the gods started by Knull himself. Long after Gorr's defeat in the King Thor timeline, King Thor uses the All Black to stop Galactus from consuming the Earth, but then the All Black connects to Galactus, who becomes Galactus the World Butcher. When Ego the Living Planet arrives, the All Black goes to Ego instead and transforms him into Ego the Necro-Planet, who then eats Galactus, and then Ego is destroyed by this timeline's Loki, who takes the All Black necro-sword and becomes Loki the All Butcher, and this sword needs to just chill the heck out because it's too much.
At number 3 is Scorn. Originally birthed from the aftermath of Carnage's shenanigans, Tanis Nieves, or Knives, I don't know, bonding with the offspring of the Carnage symbiote. Scorn then dived headfirst into a whole chaotic tangle. See, this new entity brought real firepower against Carnage, teaming up with the Mercury team to hold off a hostile takeover in Dovertown. But things took a darker turn as Scorn got entangled in the web spun by Knull, the ancient symbiote god. In a shocking showdown, a twisted chain of events unfolded. A whole cult vibe emerged, worshipping Knull, seeing Cletus Cassidy as Knull's mouthpiece. Scorn made a daring move trying to fuse the Grendel symbiote into Cletus to bring Knull back. Yet, in a brutish twist, Cletus went full rogue, taking out Tanis and leaving Scorn's destiny hanging in the balance. The symbiote roller coaster just took a wicked turn, and we're left hanging, wondering what's next in this wild, unpredictable symbiote saga.
Number 2, Venom. Chronologically, in Marvel Comics, other symbiotes had come before, but Venom was the first to appear, and the one that set the symbiotic ball rolling. After being rejected by Spider-Man, the alien Venom bonded to Eddie Brock, a disgraced reporter who also hated the Spid. The two became a lethal protector anti-hero eventually. Now, Venom is not the strongest of all symbiotes by any means, but he's certainly one of the most persevering. Venom has been tested against more dangerous symbiotes and always comes out on top because he's willing to sacrifice everything to keep the world a safer place, and also because he's the main character. He's proved that he can conquer the urges of his race and become a force for good. Because of his unbreakable spirit, Venom was powered up by the god of light itself, granting him the power to defeat Knull once and for all, allowing Eddie Brock to become the new King in Black. As for the symbiote, Venom has recently bonded with Eddie's son, Dylan Brock, and they are both acting as a hero on Earth, but the Venom symbiote has had a bunch of different hosts. The first, chronologically, was a Kree by the name of Tel-Kar, but it's also bonded to Anne Wang and Patricia Robertson to become She-Venom 2 times, the wimpy Angelo Fortano, Mac Gargan the Scorpion, Flash Thompson to become Agent Venom, who's really cool, Lee Price, Malekith the Accursed, and a bunch of other characters because Venom is just cool.
At number 1 is Sleeper. Meet Sleeper, the 7th spawn of the infamous Venom symbiote. Sleeper's origin story is a tad bit different from the brain-hungry Clintar you might be familiar with. You see, this unique symbiote was born under very unusual circumstances, thanks to Dr. Steven at Alchemex's astrobiology lab. Concerned that early bonding might turn it into a monster like the rest of the Clintar, the Venom symbiote and Eddie Brock decided to let Alchemex study it non-invasively. Now, despite its youth, Sleeper's got quite the personality, a bit smug to be honest. It boasts about its superiority thanks to its nurturing upbringing and has a soft spot for Dr. Steven's music taste. But don't get on its bad side because it's quick to anger and fiercely protective of its parent. Sleeper isn't just a pretty face though. It wields chemokinesis, the power to manipulate chemicals, induce emotions, and even cloak itself from other symbiotes. He's a hero in his own right, looking out for Eddie's son Dylan and going to great lengths to protect him.